Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Spin It Reviews, and today me and a special guest are going to be talking about the new Ed Sheeran album called Multiply. So this is pretty much my first ever collab review, and it's with John from the channel ARTV. Now, I've been watching his videos and been a fan of them for a couple of years now, and as of now we're pretty much online friends. So recently we just brought up the idea of doing this little Google Hangout collab review and discussion of the new Ed Sheeran album. Just to give a little background information, Ed Sheeran is a British singer-songwriter who's gotten a lot of success off of his full-length debut album Plus, which came out in 2011, and yielded hits like the A-Team, Small Bump, Drunk, Lego House, You Need Me, I Don't Need You, mostly bigger in the UK, but A-Team happened to be a smash hit over here, and the lead single off his new album, Multiply, has been an even bigger hit. Keep in mind that because this was sort of an off-the-cuff, unscripted review, this means that there might have been a track I didn't mention, or a point that I wasn't able to really elaborate on at some point, so if you're curious about my thoughts, other than what I actually said in the review, feel free to ask in the comments. Also, let me know what you guys think of this album, whether you agree or disagree or whatever. And there will also be a live event coinciding with this review going on maybe Thursday, though the date might change, so like the Facebook page in the description for updates on that. It'll basically be like a Q&A slash discussion slash conversation thing. We'll see where it goes. But yeah, without further ado, here it is. I just listened to Plus in full about a couple months ago, even though I've always been familiar with the singles. What do you think of his debut?
With Plus, I had heard so much hype about it. I didn't hear it in full until 2012. And I actually, while I'm not a huge fan of that record as a whole, I think there are definitely a lot of standout tracks that made me really interested in Ed Sheeran. He had that bold single, the A-Team, and I say bold just because of the fact that it's willing to tackle a subject that not many people would put in a pop song that gets played on the radio. It's talking about, you know, drug use and that sort of thing. Another things like Small Bump. Things are tackled on this record that you would not necessarily expect to hear from a singer-songwriter from the UK.
Exactly. See, I didn't think the album was perfect. Like, there were definitely some duds, which I'll get into why they were duds later on, but it really showed that he is a distinct talent in the pop world with, like, combining this, like, typical singer-songwriter kind of sound, folky kind of sound, with, like, this interesting subject matter and rap cadences. It really helped separate him from you know, most of the singer-songwriters out there.
Right, and I think that is just a whole nother identity for him, and that's what I liked. We saw some of that on Plus. We see some more of it on Multiply, but I think that whenever we started getting introduced to that other side of Sheeran, that's when I really started getting interested. Like the track "You Need Me, I Don't Need You."
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite on there.
Agreed, and I think that track was just the epitome of what I like about Sheeran and his personality, and I think that whenever that side of him flares up, that's when I really get on board.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever really heard a song like that before.
No, it's very unique. He definitely, at times, I'm not saying that Ed Sheeran is this musical genius or prodigy or anything like that, but whenever he gets on his game, you can definitely tell.
Exactly, he has a sound to him, and again, it was just a good album as a whole, but it really showed a lot of potential for what he could do in the future, and I guess the future
here we are
on Plus. I mean on Multiply or X or whatever you want
to call it. He likes math.
Yeah.
But Multiply, the first single, obviously being Sing, I think that we both had different reactions to that. I mean,
exactly. Like we didn't really go too deep into our thoughts on the album prior to this, but I remember you saying that you weren't really a fan of it, whereas I really was. Like personally, this to me is the epitome of the song that works way better than it has any right to. Like, this is a white guy with acoustic guitar song about picking up chicks with Pharrell Williams,
while rapping and crooning like Justin Timberlake from this British ginger guy whose last hit was a folk ballad about drug addiction. This song shouldn't work at all, but it does, and I don't know why.
That's definitely not what you would expect to see, I guess, necessarily near the top of the charts, even in, obviously, his home country, but even in the U.S., where we are as well. I think Sing is something that I'm really conflicted on, though. I like the pacing that Sheeran does here on this. Like you said, it's kind of got that rap cadence about it. But what really just kind of kills it for me is the fact that, sure, it's got that kind of the crooning, he goes into falsetto mode, and then it just belts out sing, and then it breaks out into the oh, whoa, whoa, the radio-friendly sing-along, and it just kills the vibe.
I guess I get that. I guess I was able to kind of overlook that, but now I think about it, it does kind of seem like a radio grab chorus. Like it was probably more. It was more interesting in the last chorus where like combined the first and second halves of the first and second times the chorus was done.
Right.
I think that made it a little more layered, I guess.
Right, and it felt like there was a little bit more to the track in its latter half or fourth, I think, to me, especially the second verse, which is probably my favorite part and the favorite thing about that entire song is just because the pace totally picks up.
You know what? I'm just grateful that you didn't say you didn't like it just because it's a song about picking up girls and like sex and stuff.
No, I'm not that serious.
Most of the people reacting negatively to it are like, "Oh, I want you to be all sentimental for every single song."
No, honestly, I like it when Sheeran has that kind of a cocky swagger about him. And it shows up on other tracks.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna kind of get this out of the way because I know you don't like talking about bonus tracks and deluxe editions, but there's this one bonus track called "Take It Back." It's a solo song with him on acoustic guitar, but he's not even like rapping like on "You Need Me, I Don't Need You," like actually rapping, and it's pretty awesome. Like I'm not sure if I'd call it my favorite song on Multiply, but it really is that album's "You Need Me, I Don't Need You," and it really should have been on the standard edition.
Yeah, I don't understand sometimes when tracks like that, I mean, I'll hear about them, and no, I don't review deluxe editions of albums just because of the fact that I feel like, if an artist really wanted to, they could just make everything on the standard edition of the album. I understand it's a record label thing, but I feel like I'm missing out on some good things sometimes because of that track you mentioned. But when you talk about the rapping and everything like that, another one I would want to point out is the track "The Man." I don't know. I don't know how you're feeling about that one.
That might be my favorite on the album. Not gonna lie.
Actually, I was honestly just about to say it's my favorite song on the album. The Man, he has, like I said, when he gets on that certain game, it's when I'm really enjoying him. And his flow on that one, it's not even, it's rapping, but it's more like almost spoken word poetry. And he's really, it makes me really feel like Ed Sheeran's coming alive lyrically. It's kind of poetic, I guess, to it, and not to a fault or anything like that. And then the chorus is really strong. I think that the man has a knack for writing choruses that comes off.
Was that intended? The man has a.
That was not intended, but
I think that in a way he isn't just like distinct as a singer-songwriter because of the rap thing. But he's kind of distinct as a rapper because he has that soft, kind of folky, sentimental voice to him that he can put that emotion into it in a way, even if he's not like screaming about it.
Right, and I like the fact that he can be very emotive as, I won't say a rapper because, that's not necessarily his forefront or his typical game, but he can be very emotive as a singer as well. I think that what mainly is the focus of Multiply is past, current, and possibly even future relationships. It's really a no-brainer, obviously, that's what he's focusing on the majority of this record, and he can be very cynical and bitter, if we're being honest.
Those are actually, I'm going to go into, I guess if you want to go into, like, the issues of this album, like, those are some of my favorite songs on this album, like The Man, Don't, Runaway.
all in my top 5 songs that you've just mentioned right there.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, that's nice to hear. Yeah, and see, I'm kind of going to go into my main issue with this album, and it's that this might sound like a weird claim, but in my opinion, Ed Sheeran is at his worst when he's romantic.
Absolutely. Whenever he gets sappy. He gets sappy.
Yeah, because, you know, some of my favorite songs on Plus, least favorite songs on Plus were, like, songs like This and Kiss Me, which were like these really basic ballads. And then there was Wake Me Up, which was way too, like, off-the-cuff sounding. Like, he talked about how bad he was at computer games and, like, how many times he's seen Shrek with this girl.
Yeah.
And see, one of my least favorites on this album, some come under like One, I'm a Mess, Tenerife Sea. I forgot how that was pronounced, but
right.
Songs like that, like they're very basic relationship songs, and there are even some cases where I notice it's a recurring thing where the formula of the song will basically be, I've got this problem going on in my life, and he talks about it kind of in the verses, but then the chorus is like, oh, but I still love you, girl, and goes into all these lovey-dovey cliches.
Right, and it's almost like he just keeps coming back and harping on the same things, and it
gets repetitive.
Yeah, and I understand, as I've understood it, at least, I believe the opening track on this record, was the first song that Sheeran wrote for this, and it dates back to almost early 2012 or even late 2011. Tracks like that, like you said, One, I'm a Mess, Thinking Out Loud.
I kind of like. You know, if I had to give one exception for that claim, it would probably be Thinking Out Loud, just because, I mean, I think that it does have a certain extra passion to it, I guess. But I think it's mostly in the instrumentation because it, frankly, reminds me a lot of John Mayer, and I like some John Mayer stuff.
Okay, I can understand that. What I thought, the track, you mentioned that you didn't like Tenerife Sea, that one actually stood out to me as one of my favorite slow-burning songs. I feel like there's a couple like Bloodstream and Tenerife Sea that really kind of hit home for me, just because of the fact that the lyrics on these felt a lot more heartfelt to me, and even though they were slower, the guitar arrangements felt unique and pretty creative to me. The song Tenerife Sea was all about feeling left out from his peers and that sort of thing. He saw that really everyone else is out doing drugs, partying, and he wrote it while he was at the Grammys in 2013. And he was just kind of there with his parents, and he kind of felt left out while everyone else was out doing other things. So I thought that made this song stand out to me and be really creative.
That's the quintessential example I was talking about. Like, there's all this interesting stuff going on, like everyone around us is lying and like all the drug addiction stuff. But then the chorus is all lovey-dovey, like, oh, your eyes are like the Tenerife Sea and your hair is beautiful. And, you know, I feel like if he just went further into that, like really went in like he does on a song like Runaway, for example, where he just talks all about like his alcoholic dad and just not being taken anymore. If he did that same thing with like the music business and his peers and stuff, I think that song would have been a lot more interesting.
That's a fair point. I can understand that complaint that you have there. It doesn't necessarily take away from the enjoyment at all for me, but if we're diving in, if I dive in deeper like that, I can see that as being a flaw. But like I said, that one, you mentioned Runaway. That track is one of my personal favorites as well. That one, I do like seeing him tackle those deeper subjects that are going to be relatable for a lot of his fans. And I really like the vocal sample on Runaway as well that kind of flared up throughout that song. It had a really nice pace about it. Like I said, top 5 for me.
Yeah, and you know, I'm not sure if you knew, but both that song and Sing were originally intended by Ed to be on a collab album between him and Pharrell, but that ended up never really happening. Well, and honestly, like musically, those are maybe two. I mean, Sing, it has that chorus, but like in terms of like instrumentation stuff, those are two of the more interesting songs in the album, and I would really love to hear that collab album.
I would too, and Pharrell Williams, sure, I've given him flack in the past because of the fact that he does sometimes kind of make his way to kind of the lowest common denominator style.
I know that we have very different opinions on Happy.
We'll save that for another. We'll save that for another video because I can talk about that.
Maybe we'll do that together at some point. But back to you.
Yeah, Pharrell Williams, he's a talented producer. The man has definitely come back into the spotlight in the past year or so, ever since the release of Get Lucky and Blurred Lines, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing at all. But getting back to, like, he did handle some of the production here on this. Rick Rubin did as well, and even Benny Blanco. I mean, the production is very... It does range. It does have a wide variety all over the spectrum, but I don't really think that that comes off as a bad thing. Some albums feel unbalanced as a result of having so many producers. I don't think that this album is necessarily one that's suffered from that.
Exactly. This might, it kind of reminds me in a way, like maybe not entirely musically, but like in that having multiple producers, kind of like the Paul McCartney album from last year, New. He went with like 4 different producers on that album. And it just made the album so much more diverse and eclectic and interesting.
Right.
Instead of just making it pointed.
Right.
So I think that's actually it kind of added to this album in a way.
I would agree with that. I do like the wide variety of everything that's just included on this record. As a whole, I'm feeling like I'm enjoying this probably a little bit more than Plus. Plus for me is something that I was kind of split right down the middle on, and I think that Multiply is something that I'm trying to think of a clever pun that involves multiplication, but I'm not gonna go there. It's actually expanded.
Your opinions are divided.
I was divided on Plus, but now it's multiplied into more of a divided reaction, I guess you could say, trying to keep it within the math realm. But seriously, though, it is something that I feel Ed Sheeran has kind of stepped up his game here on this record. And while it's not a game changer, it's not something that I think that is entirely memorable. There are definitely some forgettable tracks on this record, and I don't think that I will necessarily keep coming back to this album over and over again. There's a lot of tracks that I will continue to love.
Yeah, I've been trying to decide whether I like this or Plus more because I ended up keeping in my iTunes the same amount of songs, like 9 songs. But this album, I feel like it does show a little more potential than Plus, but whether it adds up to, not pun intended, whether or not it adds up to a better album is a little debatable. So, for now, I feel like I would, you want to throw out scores now, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you. I figured we would go with your scale, and then I would just kind of translate it to my scale.
Yeah. And I mean it's fine because for those of you who don't know, I go out of 100, he goes out of 5. So like if Plus is like a 74, this is maybe like a 72, 73. I'll decide on the description.
So it just fell slightly under for you. I think. Sorry, I was just going to say.
Now that I think about it, the weaker songs on this album are probably better than the weaker songs on Plus.
Yeah, I think that was. I think that's what the plus was for me here on Multiply, was the fact that the weaker songs weren't as weak. Going on your scale though, for this record for X, I would have to say 75 for me, which would translate to a 3.5 out of 5 for me on my channel.
Actually, yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with just going straight 75. Obviously that might change a little bit in the description, but yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with saying that. I mean, it probably won't make like my top 25 of the year. I mean, I haven't really been listening to as many albums as last year, but it's still a very enjoyable one, and it does show more potential from this guy. And I'm really hoping for the best on his next one. Maybe it'll be called Square Root. I'm hoping that'll really be his magnum opus. I'm really looking forward to that.
Right, and I do think that he's definitely. I heard someone say that if he can take the elements that he's had from the first 2 records and puts them into a third one, that it can be his truly defining record, and I think that could be the case. So I'm excited for the future for Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, definitely. Again, this won't be one of my favorites of the year, but it really shows even more promise for the guy.
Right.
Okay, so I guess that's pretty much it. Check out Album Review TV if you guys haven't already. He does cover a lot of the same artists as I do, so I imagine the Venn diagrams of audience would kind of meet there. And also, like the Facebook page in the description for updates, commentaries, and music news, and reviews of older albums. Share this around with anyone who might be interested, and hopefully I'll see you in the next episode of Spin It Reviews.